Welcome along, everyone. Thanks for turning up today. My name's Andy Devine. I work at Films at 59 as a dubbing mixer. And really, I'm here just to sort of waffle on to you about what it's like working in post-production sound for television and for film. I've been at films for 14 years. I did a national diploma from the age of 16 to 18. I then went to Plymouth College of Art to do a foundation degree with an option to top up to do the full degree. But when I got to the age of 19, I'd already learned a lot about the audio software that we were using. I knew it well enough, and I thought, I'll just chance my arm. And I don't recommend that you all do this, but I was one of those lucky gits who managed to apply for a running job and get a running job at a post-production company in Bristol. You might not think that starting off as a runner is the dream thing, making cups of tea and coffee and ferrying equipment around to locations, but it's an absolutely brilliant way to start your career and learn how to work up and learn how a company operates, learn the terms used for different people's jobs. So I knew the software well enough. I applied for a job at Films at 59 and at a couple of other companies around the UK and got offered 2 running positions. Started as a runner, did it for 4 or 5 months, kept pestering the management, say, give me a job, I want to work in sound. And they eventually threw me a bone. They let me get up, work as an audio assistant, sort of listening to all the professionals' work on headphones, learning what a mix should sound like, listening for bad like clicks and dropouts, audio anomalies, that kind of thing. And then eventually started assisting dubbing mixers and learning how to use a mixing desk, learning how to balance sounds together as to what you want to hear when you're watching telly at the end of the day. So the purpose of this talk really is to kind of show you the post side of stuff. So you've done your edit, you've cut your picture, for, your film for YouTube or whatever it is, or for your showing that you might have at the end of your course. And where do we go from there? What is the sound process? And you might get some tips and tricks. You might know half of it already, and I'm wasting your time, and I'm sorry if that's the case. But I want to sort of start off by saying, who knows what a dubbing mixer is, first of all? Any idea? So there might be a point to me being here. Okay, so a dubbing mixer, there's me. I am the person pretty much near the end of the chain that takes all of the audio elements that have come from the picture editor, the offline, the online editor's sequence, and balance them together to create the final mix. And I get to sit in a room that's treated with sort of soundproofing, so it's as clean as possible. I don't want to hear what's going on outdoors. I don't want to hear washing machines going off in the background. I need to make sure I can hear everything. And I sit in a room with a mixing desk, and these are one of the mixing desks that we use at Films. It's made by the same people who make the software that I use. The software is called Pro Tools, and it's made by Avid. And Avid make this desk. Have any of you guys used stuff like this before? No? A little bit, maybe? Yeah. They look a bit intimidating when you first sit behind them. And when you're mixing for Hollywood, you end up using maybe 3 of these in a row. And you'll have one person focusing on dialogue, and you'll have one person sat along, a few meters away working on effects, and then Atmos, and then music. They're not that intimidating. All you need to think about is that each fader and each of those buttons, it's just the same thing, repeated, 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 and each fader is assigned a sound or a channel in your audio workstation. And just to give you an idea of how many you can balance, this is a snapshot of a mix I did last week for a natural history film. Now, when you're thinking about creating the finished soundtrack for your film, you want it to sound full, you want it to sound rich. But you also might not have a lot of sound from the location of where you've shot. So this is a wildlife film. There isn't a sound man brave enough on this earth to sit next to a lion whilst it's eating its kill and mic it up and say, can you just go again, mate? That's great. Yeah, I just want to get more of the gore. And there's no microphone in the world good enough to pick up the sound from where they're filming it, because most of the wildlife that we work on at Films, obviously, it's shot on long lenses, that can be 500 yards away. So what we do is we add all of the elements that are missing. And in a wildlife film, and I'll show you later how little stuff we get, they're mute. When they come to us, they're pretty much mute, apart from some music they might have laid in. So all of these blobs of media, and you'll be used to seeing this when you've been editing sequences on Premiere, they'll be visual, but in this situation, all of these little blobs are clips of media. So you can see they're all color-coded. We've got tracks for music, tracks for mono effects, things like calls and or door slams, specific things like that. We've got stereo effects. These are longer sort of ambient beds, things that are detailed but not like calls, so things like waterfalls or running water, just to add a bit more detail and consistency as well to the soundtrack. These blue ones down here are atmospheres, and these are the glue. If you can take anything away from today when you're making your films, use atmospheres. Record them yourself. Go out in the field with a zoom or a Tascam. Just record the location that you're in. Because what you can do is run it for that scene and glue all of those effects together. Because there's no point just having little blips of media on their own, because you'll hear them coming and going. You're looking for a binding agent. So essentially, once you've done that, you've used your mixing desk and your balancing, and we'll go into that more in a bit in detail later, you can create something which sounds a little bit like this and is a little bit fun.
Chloe, Dad says that we need to leave now.
For God's sake, hurry up!
Dad!
Okay, we need to go. We need to go right now. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Come on, Tommy, now! This is a mandatory evacuation. Please leave your room. Get in the car, now!
What is that?
Come with me, I can help you. Come on, there's somewhere safe, we can go. Come on. We need to get underground.
It's a little bit of an onslaught for the eyes and ears, isn't it? But basically that is a film that I mixed a couple of years ago that was nominated for an RTS award for Best Sound, and it wasn't because it was, up to Hollywood level or anything like that. It was because we had no time. I did all of the sound design for it, I did all the mix for it in 4 days. And they wanted it in surround sound and all that sort of stuff. So it's also about what you can achieve with the limited time that you've got, and you guys will know all about that in terms of working from 7 in the morning till 3 the next morning. But it can be a really, really fun job to do, taking all those elements. We don't always get nice projects like that to work on, science fiction, aliens and gunshots and stuff like that. A lot of the time it's Antiques Roadshow or Country File, which are fine in their own right, but not quite as creative as that. So now you know roughly what it is I do in simplistic terms, and the sort of tools that we use, the audio software and the mixing desk. But where do I fit in that chain? Does anyone know the sort of 3 core stages of making a film or a television show? No? Okay. So there are 3. The first one is pre-production. You guys might know all this already. Pre-production is everything prior to actually shooting your script. So you come up with the idea, you get the finance sorted, you arrange your cast and your crew, you rehearse, you get everything sorted, you get it all put together, ready to go ahead and start your shoot. Then you've got production. So that is actually shooting the film. This is all happening before I get involved. You're on set, like it says, you're managing the crew, you're managing the cast, you've got call sheets to manage all this. Please make sure they're fed and watered, very important. Keep them happy. And also store safely all the material that you've shot with, okay? It's, we get it a lot where stuff goes missing, even working in modern day high profile jobs. So whether you're shooting on film, tape, cards, log them all, keep them all safe, ready for the best stage of all, post-production. I'm a little bit biased, of course. And this is kind of where you see all of the labours, all of your hard work come together as one thing. So you take your rushes, you take your dailies, and you cut them together. And we're very lucky working in the industry because we have dedicated people that do each of these jobs. Whereas you guys, you write the theme tune, you sing the theme tune, you do the whole thing yourself. Whereas in post-production, we have dedicated offline video editors, dedicated online video editors, the people who add all the graphics and grade it and make it look nice. In terms of the sound, it becomes a bit grey as to the order of what things happen, because it's normally a bit crazy right towards the end of a production, regardless of whether you're working in Hollywood, television, being a student. It always comes down to those last sort of few days. So we might at some point get voiceover recorded. Providing the picture has been cut and locked, we should be able to carry on with the post-production sound. So that is getting the music composed, recording the Foley, which we'll touch on later. Going to the sound editor to add the extra sounds and tidy up whatever was given out of the video sequence. And then lastly, or penultimately, it comes to me. And I get all of that. Everything's been done, the picture's finished, it's looking gorgeous. The track layer's done, so they've added all the sounds that are needed to make it full and rich, like I showed you in that sequence earlier. And then it's up to me in that room to balance the elements together, sign it off with about 11 different clients who've all got a different view of how their program should sound, and then couple it with the final picture at the end. But now you know where I fit in, why should we care about sound? Why is sound so important in film and television? Any ideas? Just shoot them out at me, come on.
Without sound, it's just, the film doesn't feel right.
Doesn't feel right, just feels unnatural.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Film makes up half the experience of film. I know. Sound makes half the experience of the film.
Yeah, I mean, you can shoot films to visually and rely on the visual side of things to tell a narrative and do that creatively, absolutely. But if you're trying to tell, if it's a documentary, if it's a film with dialogue, you can't have that same experience unless you've got good sound, unless you can experience sound. We kind of say there are like 3 key rules with why sound is important. One is narrative, as mentioned, recording your dialogues or your narration really nice and clean so that everyone can hear it is pivotal to telling a story. Second of all, sound creates emotion. So whether it's a sad piece of music or whether it's an effect that's in a horror film that's suddenly very loud and scares you, it's a massive contributing factor to your experience in a film. And then lastly, it's bringing things to life. It's kind of, you imagine Iron Man when he's like about to shoot his fist, if that doesn't have any sound, or that sound that we all know, it doesn't have the same feeling, it doesn't have the same impact. So those are the core rules of why we care about sound. But there's an interesting man in a beanie, you might have seen this video before, who explains better than me why good sound is important. I was chatting earlier to these guys. Yes, you can record sound, and yes, sometimes you might not have a choice where you just have to get a mic running and you can't position it at anybody's mouth to get good sound. But good sound, as opposed to good picture, should be as important, if not more important.
Let's play a little bit of a game here. Imagine you're shooting a film or video and you have a choice to make between really good video quality and really good audio quality. Which do you choose? You'd be surprised how many people actually choose really good video and how this could probably be to their detriment. And we're going to show you 2 examples. First, really good audio but really terrible video. So you can see with really terrible video how you can follow what I'm saying, how you can get into the story despite the fact that the image has been degraded. Directors will use this creatively, like the Blair Witch Project, which is like an hour and a half of really terrible video, but the audio is so good, you can follow the story. Things change drastically when we switch that around.
Suddenly, with really bad audio, it's hard to take what I'm doing seriously. It's hard to take this whole video seriously. And to get through something like this that's even 5 minutes is painful. This might work maybe with action cams if the content is really good, like a skydiver. We kind of forgive that for a second. But for an actual film content, you can't pull this off. It's terrible and it's unwatchable. And it's only unwatchable because the audio is terrible. So I'm going to switch things back for the benefit of all of us.
You can see how having good video and good audio is so super important. But if you had to choose, you shouldn't have to choose, but if you had to, maybe good audio is what you should be choosing.
Thank you, Mr. Beanie. Has anyone seen that video before? It's a brilliant way of just like 2 minutes of showing this is why sound is important. And if it's anything alongside the using Atmos and recording your own atmospheres, get good sound whatever project that you're working on. When you're on set, when you're on location, that is the only opportunity really that you have to go and get that, whatever it is you're recording, dialogue. We have situations where someone might be using an expensive prop that they've hired for a day. Say, my dream is it's a 67 Ford Mustang, and the actor's using like the doors, they're using the keys, they might be fiddling with the gear shifter. Get those sounds recorded clean, because yeah, you can fake it later on, you can find a sound effect that's, half decent, but it will never be quite the same thing. So always get good sound when you're on location. So Alan asked me, from our perspective, when we're doing post-production sound, what is the workflow? You're cutting, I think you were saying you're using Premiere, or you might be using FCP. How do we get from the picture editor into something like Pro Tools, something like Logic? Does anyone know how you'd get sound out from one to the other? Anyone done it? Okay, so we use two types of file format called AAF and OMF. Okay, you're going to come into contact with this at some point. And these are essentially, not to be confused with .AIFF, which is kind of like a music format that's just 2 channels of sound, or 8 channels of sound. It is a wrapper. A .AAF is a wrapper that takes all of your sound locked in sequence and allows it to be interchangeable between video software and imported into audio software. So if you imagine this is your edit you're using, and you've got a few layers here at the top, which are your video layers. So you've got a few transitions, different shot changes, but then everything else is the sound. And yes, you could do it in Premiere, and it's probably half decent to some degree, but let's say you want more control, you want to get into Pro Tools. Well, we use the AAF to say, right, let's take all of these sounds, but we want to keep them locked in timecode. We want them to keep them locked in this position that they're in now. And the great thing about AAF as well is that it takes across data. So not just the clips, but it also takes across if you've made some volume tweaks, or if you've muted a clip, or if you've panned the sound from one speaker to another. It'll actually take a lot of that information, all that hard work that you've put in, so that it'll come to someone like me or a sound editor, and they will see what you've done and understand and carry on your work from there. So it's very important stage to get it into Pro Tools, and I've actually got an example of what we expect from if you guys go off to be an offline editor. By offline I mean you take the rushes and you actually create the sequence using lower res versions of the files that you shot originally, because it takes so much space. What do we expect at the end? Well, we expect an end of edit. So you cut your sequence, you're happy, you do an end of edit, you export. You can see the top there, that green bar, that is our picture once imported in. So we want a mix down of the picture, and then we want all of the audio that comes from your sequence locked in timecode, just like I was saying to you earlier. Now, you can see there's not actually a great deal of material. That's because this show is predominantly dialogue. When you're making your sequences, in whatever video editing software you're using, keep it neat and tidy, please. We do some work with people called Random Acts. You might have heard of. These are sort of, teenagers all the way up to, in their 20s. People by Channel 4 that get commissioned to make their short films. And it's all learning by doing. They get an opportunity to be cameramen or to see their script come to life. The trouble is, when they get to this stage, when they're editing their pictures together, they create a channel they have created a channel for every sound effect. So we'll import an AAF from their sequence, and it's 200 tracks deep for a 3-minute short. Please don't do that. If you're going to do this, try and keep it neat and tidy. So, much like this, I know straight away that they've got 4 channels here dedicated to dialogues. Brilliant. I know that these 4 channels here, 1, 2, 3, 4, are for music. And then you've got some sort of effects for whooshes and things, and then narration. Scratch commentary. Scratch commentary. Who knows what scratch commentary is? Okay. If you're a producer or a director, you're cutting your film, you're making a documentary, say it's your final year of uni, you want to do a really, really good job. You might have even been commissioned. My cousin was commissioned to do a short for the social workers in Birmingham. And he cut the film. The film was cut brilliantly, but he hadn't contemplated how long the commentary would take to fit the words in that he wanted to say. And so he would literally got to do it. He had his script. He went to read his lines, and he ended up sounding like he was narrating some like horse race or something. It was just really, really, really quick and very, very uncomfortable to listen to. So, and in this process, bear in mind when you're cutting your films, if you're doing a documentary and you've got out of vision dialogue, whether it's narration or just normal dialogue, bear in mind, leave yourself headroom to fit in those, write your script, do rough versions of your script whilst you're cutting it, so you know you're not going to end up sounding horrendous at the end of it. And so, yeah, this is an example of what we've got from Dickinson's Real Deal, classic show that's on at 3 o'clock every weekday. So that's it in its rawest form, okay, from a video editor, from a picture editor. The next stage, and this is really where we get into the nitty-gritty, is what a dubbing editor does. You're going to hear so many terms about what these roles are, okay? Dubbing editor, sound editor, audio designer, they're all relatively the same thing, okay? The sound editor's job is to take that AAF and to sort it out, put it into Pro Tools or whatever audio software you're using, divvy it up so it's on all the right tracks, and then smoothen it out. So I'm going to very, very quickly walk you through what we do. This is a really simple AAF taken from a Q&A done ages ago. And you can see we've got the top layer like we had before, the video layer, question and answer, and then thanks on the end. And we've got the audio that goes with it. Question and answer. Now, you could work with it like this. You could. But does anyone spot anything between the question and the answer, just from looking at the waveforms, that could be a bit of an issue?
One's louder.
One is louder. Yeah, I mean, that is exactly it. So if you were to just play across this without really paying much attention to levels, you're going to get a sudden hit of sound and a sudden quiet sound. It becomes very, very tiresome to listen to. Also, you can see the background. In between these bits of dialogue, the background's quite loud. It's a little bit loud there, but it's a lot cleaner on the answer. So the first stage of a sound editor, with any project that we do, splits it out. We call it checkerboarding. Very, very important process. Instantly now, we've got 2 separate channels, which will appear on your mixing desk as 2 faders, and you can ride them a little bit and sort out that level difference straight away. Simple stuff. But if you still play across those edit points, where it breaks, you're still going to hear the difference in the background level to the cleaner recording of the answer. So what do? First things first, and you'll probably know this, just simply fade it in and out. Fade it in and out, yeah? So if you've got handles with your media, drag them out and fade them in, and straight away, you're going to have more of a smooth transition across your scenes. If you think about how you watch a tennis match, right? So you're watching a game like this, you're blinking as you watch. Your brain is interpreting what it's seeing essentially in frames, in blocks, because it's a broken feed. You don't have that with sound. You don't have someone coming up to you and smacking you around the ears every time you blink. So sound is a constant thing. It's never interrupted. And that's the idea of the sound editor, is to look for those holes, look for those errors, and fill them to create a finished soundtrack, one that's smooth. Now you can see, okay, we've got the fades in and outs. That's great. But we've still got the issue where these louder tracks have the louder background noise. So even as you're fading in and out, you've got it running fairly smoothly. You might have even adjusted the level. The traffic's going to come in every time. I'm assuming this is traffic. Does anyone know what we can do to prevent that irritating hearing the traffic come every now and again? Any ideas? No? We can noise reduce it. We have plugins that can look at irritating sounds, whether it's fridge hum, whether it's aircon, it might be wind, we might be able to knock out. But sometimes you can hear those plugins working. Sometimes that restoration sounds a bit alien and like you can hear something untoward. So we actually dirty it up, for want of a better term. And this is about filling your soundtrack again. We add more traffic. Now, if any of you have watched Lost, it was a series on years and years ago, a lot of scenes were on a beach, and you could hear the dialogue coming in and out. And that's because, although they did a good job, they probably didn't add enough atmosphere. It's a really distracting thing when you've got a lovely peaceful scene and then suddenly this loud background noise comes in with the dialogue. So by adding the glue, I was saying earlier about Atmos being your bed, it binds these together and makes it much less noticeable when a cleaner recording and a noisy recording come together. Very, very important. Atmos is your friend. And then lastly, the sound stage of a dubbing editor, sound editor. Let's just say this question here, right? They were filming, they didn't have a chance to do a retake. As we come to that, there's a loud London bus that goes past. And that's going to shock the listener, you know, when you're watching. Suddenly you've got nice clean dialogue and then, oh, there's a loud bus. Let's say there's no handle to drag out that media to help bring in that bus gradually. It's the same technique we used as before. Add in a bus. It seems really boring. It's a bit like painting by numbers, but don't underestimate it. If you watch anything on MTV, they don't do any of this stuff. It's just really badly cut, and it's very uncomfortable to listen to, and they'll plaster it with music. If you can create a mix like that, create your timeline like that, it'll be a much, much more pleasurable experience for all that are watching and enjoying the film. Gradually introducing a bus so that by the time it plays across, your brain's already accepted that it's there, rather than going, oh, what was that about? So that's dubbing editing, really, track laying. We call it track laying because essentially it is adding new tracks, adding it, tarting it up. Those are the sort of the core things. They tidy up the AEF, they smooth an existing sound, and we do sound restoration. Has anyone heard of, we've got a thing called Isotope. It's pretty much out there as the go-to sound restoration program. Now, well, I'll just show you quickly now how it works. So, going back to this sequence, this film that I was showing you a clip from earlier, there's a chap here with a plastic toy gun who's delivering lines of dialogue. So if I play that to you once again, right at the very top, you can hear him sort of jangling about with his plastic gun. So there's a couple of clicks in there. Now, albeit once you add loads more sound, you're not going to notice that so much, but we have had directors and producers in the past that, that are very anal about these sort of things. They don't like irritating sounds that don't need to be there. So here's this little chestnut here called Isotope. These come in different flavors. You've got ones dedicated to declicking. You've got ones dedicated to removing background sound. You've got all sorts of little tools that you can use. But this one, if put in the right mode, I'll show you what it can take out. So that's what it's taking out. It's looking for clicks. And obviously, if you change the tolerance, it'll take less out or it'll take more out. Just depends how irritating the sound is to you. Don't ever let it get to that stage. We have so many people coming up to us going, oh, we'll fix all of the bad sound in post. It'll never be quite what it should be. I always use the anagram, or the analogy rather, you can only take a turd and roll it in glitter. It's always going to be rubbish underneath still. So get it as good as you can right from the off, okay? We can use noise restoration tools like that, but it's never quite the same as getting sound recorded well first time around. So the other thing we can do, the last stage really, is adding sounds, okay? So we can do this with sound libraries. We've got, like, I think 3 terabytes of sound effects that we've built up over the last 30 years. You can go to places like Sound Ideas, you can buy libraries. The BBC yesterday released 16,000 free sound effects that you can use. Not commercially, but they've got a big database now and they said, yeah, go for your life, help yourself. So that's quite a useful tool. But we also do a thing called Foley. Who here knows what Foley is? These 2 guys. Okay. Foley is probably one of the most creative jobs in film and television. You have Foley artists that work on every single Hollywood film, Foley artists that work on all wildlife shows, And they essentially get to, it's a bit like when you went to sort of primary school, maybe nursery, where you get to play in a sand pit and play with a water tank. They get paid to do that. They literally take a wildlife film and they say, right, well, it's come across mute, we've got no sound for this, but there's a lion walking right to left across the screen. You know, we need to get the sound of his feet, we need the sound of him maybe rolling around in the dirt. Somebody called a Foley artist recreates those. So he sits in a room with pits and he recreates those sounds. It's arguably probably the most creative stage in post sound. And I've got a little film here, it's 4 minutes long, but it's rather good at explaining how we do. This is a colleague of mine. As a mixer, it's my responsibility to record the Foley, and then you have a Foley artist who's the one that gets to bang on a tin drum or whatever it is he wants to do.
Foley it's a strange profession. Creating sound for never really thought about doing it as a profession. Didn't think anybody would pay me to kind of do that full time. Going back to the 90s, I did a music technology degree, and as part of my degree I did work placement with a games company. And that was my first introduction to Foley. You know, I was always drawn to the more technical aspect of the craft, really. And Foley was a happy medium for me. It's an instantly creative role, and it just seems to sit with me really well. There are those who believe you need to get into the character of whatever it is you're covering. Personally, I find what works for me is a more zen state of mind where you're reacting to what's put in front of you. One of the weirdest things we did was a series called The Hunt. There was a Porsche spider, and it basically feeds on other spiders, but it can plan its attack route. Because it's so small, it usually, in a straight-on fight with another spider, it will generally lose. But it has the ability to strategize about how it approaches its prey. We did a lot of stylized Foley for that. We used a lot of rubber bands stretched out, which we plucked like a guitar string, and we used slinkies stretched, and so you had a lot of that kind of, and then stuck the microphone actually down the slinky, so you got that kind of chambered metallic reverberation, and it worked quite well actually. The nice thing about that whole sequence was when we passed it on to the mixer, he went through and picked out all the rubber band tones we did and pitch shifted them within Pro Tools and turned them into the lead instruments in the orchestration piece that they'd been given for the film. It's quite rare for the Foley to get used like that. Usually you are the losing artist when it comes to music.
Drawing the spider in to its death.
One of the key things to remember is it's not our film. And there have been instances where we've spent 4 hours on a 5-minute section of film for it all to just get thrown in the bin and to be run on music. It's heartbreaking, but that is the reality of life, unfortunately. The most fun sound I've ever made in a Foley booth was for a CGI animation on Kung Fu Chicken. One particular episode they had a monster that was made out of lipo-sucked fat, which sounds disgusting and was quite disgusting, but quite funny. And we spent half a day filling balloons with custard and throwing them about the booth and just getting incredibly yellow. It's the only way I could describe it, really. Sequences that you spend the most time on are usually drama-based. And it's usually a case of trying to match feet acoustics, because they're quite difficult to do. Learning to walk in high heels takes a big practice. I don't know why women wear them, they're so painful. They really are. So uncomfortable. For a reasonable drama Foley artist, it takes 2 years of training. For a natural history, they reckon it's about 3 years. You never stop learning. There's always something you haven't done before. But the keys are having a good prop store, knowing your prop store backwards, knowing what kind of sounds everything in your prop store makes. So as soon as you see something on screen, you go, I know what to use for that. Bad sound sticks out like a sore thumb. Good Foley, you shouldn't really notice. You should watch the finished product and not even realise it's there. You should just believe it.
So there you go. That's Foley, and it's yeah, it's. I mean, for the sequence that he was showing you earlier about the spider being dangled down, fascinating stuff. I mean, we had a sequence in that where there were baby praying mantis being born, and there was no sound for it. We're like, well, how the hell do we create that? And so we ended up doing about 8 layers of sound. So we're talking like a crispy element, a crunchy element, a rubber element, a wet element. And all the time, Rich there will be in the booth, you know, with normally getting wet tissue paper or satsumas and digging his thumbs in and trying to make it, you know, sound as gross as possible. So Foley is, yeah, sort of almost the penultimate stage. And then it finally comes to me, the final mix. So Alan asked me to sort of explain what it is I do, you know, how do you know what to deliver? How do we know what we're delivering for? So let's have a look. We've done the offline edit. You've given an AAF to the sound editor. The sound editor has done his tidying up. We've then added all the extra sound effects, and we're ready to rock and roll. Well, the way that I know, my first port of call in terms of what to deliver, audio-wise, is via a broadcast technical specification. And yes, it is as dull as it sounds. It is a huge, I've actually got a copy. It is a document that used to be about that thick of rules that we need to abide by that tell us how loud something should be, what the audio allocation should be, where you can safely put your subtitles so they don't get cut off for Enid when she's watching her natural history show on a 14-inch black and white telly. All these things we have to think about. So National Geographic, they've got, you know, I mean, just to sort of show you, they'll tell you how much black and what kind of bars they want on the run-up. Sometimes you see a clock or a bit of bars before a program broadcasts by accident. Here it tells you sort of what kind of level of what type of audio allocation they want, surround mixing, stereo mixing, that kind of thing. Very, very dull, but that has to be the first port of call. Now you guys, you don't have a broadcast spec to meet. You guys are having to think, right, who am I delivering this to? You might be watching on an iPad, you might be watching on, I don't know, a screening like you're doing later today. Whenever you're doing your mix, whenever you're finishing your sound, think about where it's going to end up. I was saying to these guys earlier, you know, if you're doing something that's like a horror film, but you know it's going to be shown on an iPad, you know, don't go too dynamic. Don't do really, really loud and then really, really quiet, because it won't work when you're trying to listen to it amongst everything else that's going on. So bring back that dynamic range. Keep things a little bit smoother in terms of the difference in the level. And that is essentially my job. The role of the mixer is taking all of those elements together, balancing them to the spec. It's dealing with the clients, so it's not uncommon to have maybe 11 or 12 producers, directors, execs sitting in all with an own opinion, saying, oh, I don't like the sound of that polar bear, can you do it differently? I did actually once, it was an episode of Hairy Bikers, he was stirring his teaspoon and the director asked me, can I please have that teaspoon sounding more romantic? And I've got to try and interpret what they mean by that, you know. So that's, as creative individuals, that's going to be half your battle, is working with other creative individuals and interpreting and being able to work well as a team. And that's actually why you find little production companies setting up, because they've worked together back in the day, and they know they gel together well and produce good telly. So yeah, I have to meet client expectations. It does sound a bit like painting by numbers and ticking boxes, but occasionally you get to work on stuff that is fun, like this film, The Darkest Dawn. This was made on a micro budget by a very small independent company, yet it's done very, very well. It's now on Netflix, it's now on Sky, it's now on Amazon. You can watch it everywhere. And just to give you a quick example of a scene of sound, have a watch.
Rich! Colin, we've got company!
Oh, bash the devil's stone and pelt our awful goodnesses, and so virtue in us shake, and pride is lost.
It's a really cheerful film. I recommend you watch it. So just to sort of wrap up, really, this talk, that's a sequence, and then you can imagine now from having seen everything laid up, there are a lot of components that go into making something like that. And just to look at the mono effects for when the gun turret goes off on the ship, it's not one sound, it's a few mono and a few stereo. My favourite of which being, if I just play it. Nice bass in this room. It's comprised of like 5 or 6 elements. So, and this comes with trial and error. You know, you don't know the first thing you're going to use is going to work. But who knew that a reversed, pitch shifted, and then vari-speeded bar now would be a good contributing element? You don't know until you try. In fact, animal sounds are great for creating kind of creepy alien sounds. And also one of my personal favorites, which is a biplane, which was actually used as a technique with Godzilla. Biplanes, they've got that sort of already rotary sound, that kind of pulsing sound. But if you slow it down, pitch it down, and then distort it, it creates a kind of, that kind of bassy, enriching, charging type sound. And again, it's learning from things you've done and then putting it into practice. Now, the very, very last stage, and to wrap up the talk, is what do we do once this is all done? All my producers have gone. They're happy that, you know, we've got a finished mix. But how do we get that to where it needs to go? Where is it going to? Let's look at Downton, for example. Okay, very, very popular drama series. It is popular all over the world. But not all over the world speaks English as their native tongue. So what do? Well, they ask us to produce audio deliverables from any end of any mix. And audio deliverables do what they say on the tin. They are all of the elements that we've got in that session, all those tracks that you saw. Once they're all mixed together and you're happy, we then boil them down into these channels here. So it looks like a lot of media, but actually they're just left and right. They're just stereo, like you'd listen to any music track. But it's condensed down, so separate effects, separate music, separate dialogue. And this will be stipulated in the spec that I showed you earlier. And essentially, it means that someone in, you know, Shanghai or in Korea can take all of those elements and go, I don't want the English spoken word. I've got my own re-recorded dialogue. I can rip out the dialogue they've sent me and replace it with the dialogue that was recorded by me. And now I've got, you know, a Korean version of that mix. And that is essentially the very, very last stage. And I hope it's proved of inspiration or at least information to you guys for this talk. I am done. Feel free to ask any questions that you like. Don't all talk at once. Yes, sir?
I've got one question
About?
the specs.
Oh, yeah, go on.
So you know, you said like the deliverables and like if you've got different outputs, do you have to remix it for sort of like if it's for an online deliverable and a TV deliverable and an IMAX deliverable?
Yeah, we do. We have, I mean, actually, I didn't mention this to you guys. Always have a pair of rubbish speakers whenever you're mixing. It's all very well. I mean, our rooms have got 20 grand's worth of high-tech kit. But, you know, if you're sat watching it on your phone, that's no good. You know, it needs to work across all platforms. If it's high budget enough, we will do a separate theatrical mix, a separate TV mix, generally. We'll do 2 separate mixes. One, as I was saying, with the dynamic range reduced. Because if you're in a cinema, you've got none of that, and you can go as quiet as you like and still be able to hear it. But if you play that same mix in a lounge when you've got your kitchen with the washing machine on, you won't be able to hear it. So we do. And we have different sets of speakers for those situations. You know, and we'll actually end up sometimes getting new tech specs it's going to and having to remix again to meet a new spec, you know. Yeah, it's all painting. It is numbers at the end of the day. Yeah. Anyone else?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like taking pictures. I always carry around my camera, and you like record sounds, don't you? So do you ever like carry around your mic, and then you might hear a sound string. Oh, that's a good sound. I'll record that, or you might just get like a little notebook, and you might just jot down what that noise was and just try to recreate it later.
Yeah, I do that a lot. My wife gets very fed up with me actually, because I do carry around my Tascam with me quite a lot. Mostly when I go on holiday to somewhere new where there might be, like Thailand, I took it with me because there was some great forest atmos of birds and stuff. Because otherwise you have to pay like hundreds of pounds for sound libraries, and that just gets really irritating. So if you're already going on holiday, just spend 5 minutes, you know. Do it yourself. Exactly. Go on, sir.
What's your favourite sound mix of all time from film?
Ooh, how dare you put me on the spot like that. Favourite sound mix? Well, everyone always goes to Saving Private Ryan. That's a really, really good sound mix, especially if, you know, using effects to then become something else, you know. And, you heard it a bit there when the plane went over, where rolling off all of the sound so it goes really dull and then coming back to life. Gravity is really, really good. And the recent-ish Sherlock films with Robert Downey Jr. are some of the best, cleanest mixes that I've heard. So yeah. But they get like 2 months worth of post-production sound, you know, so it should be good. So yeah. Cool. Thanks very much, guys.